It is 6:30. I'd like to call this meeting to order. There is a quorum present with all present. Is there any amending, any information, or approving of the agenda? Tammy.
The number 5 spotlight, we will have to do that a different time. Mrs. Fettis is out sick, so we will not have the FCCLA spotlight tonight.
Okay. Any others? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda minus number 5, the spotlight for the FCCLA.
So move.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Cook, seconded by Mr. Gregg. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the agenda with the exclusion of number 5 indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Move on to number 3, which is the oath of office. Tammy is going to take care of that with Mr. Sellers.
All right, I'm just going to read the oath to you, and hopefully you'll just agree.
Okay.
Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that you will faithfully and impartially, to the best of your ability, discharge the duties of the office of board member in the West Sioux School District as now and hereafter required by law?
I will.
Thank you, and welcome to the board. Moving on to number 4, we have staff and student recognition. Heidi?
The first one is the thank you from the family of Delbert Zwart, which is Deanne Decker's father. Deanne works at the elementary as a TK teacher.
Okay, and then student recognition, we have middle school student council. 8th grade is Brianna Clucky and Emily Holshoff. 7th grade, Avery Coyle and Yanara Boyso. 6th grade, Lizzie Westra and Carson Van Ort. And then we have September students of the month, Booker Walsh, Kyler Fredericks, Cassie Copeman's, Camera Cargan, Addie Van Ort, Levi Copeman's, Micah McVeigh, Zach Steckelberg, Charity Allen, Brady Hawkins, Garrett Harding, Yanir Topete, Callie Mulder, Curtis Owen, Seth Socker, Jadelyn Vargas, Peyton Suisa, Priscilla Flores, Jenna Morgan, Alex Dominguez, Christian Maxson, Brooklyn Sievers, Riley Baker, Jake Lynett, Marlene Ramos, Tucker Vanderfeen, and Andrew Wissink.
Thank you. Any additions to anything we've missed? Okay, if not, we'll move on to number 6. Now, this is informational. This is the first reading of the 200 series policies, and Mr. Gregg is going to present it to us.
Yes, in your packet you have, well, I think you probably have all of the 200 series, but you also have a stapled version of the sections of the 200 series that we'll be addressing tonight. It would be the packet that has some highlighting on it, yellow highlighting. If you take a look at that, at the top, there's a box that explains from the Iowa School Board Association what needed to be changed in this policy when we sent our policies in for review. So I have taken those recommended changes from the School Board Association and made those changes, highlighted them down below. We've got some words that are deleted and other words that are added, but any change is highlighted in yellow. So the parts of the policy that we're looking at amending would be the 200.1 organization of the Board of Directors, code number 201 Board of Directors elections, Some of these are just wording, but some are due to changes in the law. There is code number 202, which is membership, and it describes what the area of each of our director districts. Code 202.3 is term of office, and just some wording changes there. And code 202.4, which deals with vacancies. 206.1 deals with the president, and 206.2, the vice president. Any questions about those changes? This was just the first reading, right?
Yes.
And so we'll have the second reading next month.
Correct. Does anybody have any questions and had ample time to read through it? This is not an action item. The action item will actually come the next meeting after the second reading. Move on to the number 7, to the consent agenda. These are all action items. We'll go through each one of them, and then we'll come back and vote. The August minutes are in front of you. Any corrections? We also have the August invoices, which, Ken, everything
Everything looks good.
okay? We have the August Secretary's Financial Report that Mr. Kramer will give us.
So it'll be coming up momentarily.
Okay.
Okay. You can see it right behind you. First thing we'll go over is the cash balance. Shoot. Let me go back to it. As you can see, we currently, in comparison to the previous year, have a cash balance of almost $100,000 more than we did the previous year. In comparison to years prior, this is getting into the more average. I will again remind the board members that this is very early in our budget year, so the more months that we go, the more accurate our comparisons will be to previous years. Same thing with the revenue of the year to date. There's a difference of $475,000 in the plus that we have received compared to last year. Again, that is pretty consistent with where we were at in years previous. Expenditures to date. This is where we have about just under $50,000 more of expenditures. This may be attributed to different things being paid at different times of the year. So as we again get more months along the year of our fiscal year, we'll be able to make better comparisons. But this is one that I would like to kind of keep a closer eye on. As you kind of can see, it's very consistent with the 2014-15 year, so it's not completely out of whack, but it's still one that always want to keep our eye on as we get more numbers in.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Kramer concerning this? Anybody have any further questions about the minutes? I skipped on to the next one while maybe people were looking. Okay. If that's the case, this is an action item, like I said, which does require motions and a vote. I would entertain so.
I'll move we accept the items on the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Motion made by Mr. Gregg, seconded by Mr. Sellers. Any further discussion before we vote? Ken?
We didn't say any, excuse me, didn't say anything about the management fund. Are we pretty much in line with that? I think we are, but I wondered.
I'd have to take a look. I didn't have that
Okay.
in my report for Jake this month, so
Yeah, I know,
I'll
but-
take a look.
That's what we took money out of to reduce the taxes, isn't it?
Right.
Okay. And then the activity fund seems to have an extremely large number of dollars. I haven't seen it that high since I've been on the board.
Mr. Boza, go ahead.
Okay, that still is, take that out of there, and that's still way up there.
I think it'll be one we'll have to watch on a monthly basis, because if you remember, we did decide last year, Mr. Boza, was that correct, to pay the officials out of that fund? So it may be a time in which we can, it's always good yearly to reevaluate that and to see if that was successful for our plan, what we wanted to do, and make sure we're sponsoring those activities, but also to see what's the impact on the general fund. So we need to let's take a look at that for next month and see where we are in comparison, if we need to make adjustments. Thank you, Mr. Cook.
I guess at this time, what I'd like to do is recommend, Ryan, that we expand your report to include more of the funds and how we divert where we put the money that comes in to us. Okay. There's been a motion made and seconded to accept the consent agenda as it's been presented to us. So at this time, all those in favor of accepting the consent agenda as it's been presented to us indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on to the reports, we have the TLC report.
I believe we have just the written report for this month. If there are any questions, we can.
Okay. In our packets and in the packets for the audience contains the written report that was submitted to us. This is all just information, number 8 is, so there's no voting on it. It's just basically presentations. Activities Director report from Mr. Boza.
I just got a couple things. How about now? Can you hear me now? We will be hosting first round of postseason volleyball next Tuesday, the 18th. We will be playing Woodbury Central. The winner will move on to play Hinton on the 24th. Our football team's currently undefeated. We hope to be able to host some playoff games there as well, one or more. I would like to highlight that Haley Pullman finished tonight's War Eagle Conference cross-country meet as the girls' conference champion. First place overall, so congratulations to her. It's been a while since we've had a cross-country conference champion at our school, so. As far as projects, the long jump runway and pit have been poured. We'll be putting sand in the pit soon, and then Fisher Track is trying to work us into their schedule to come in and do the finishing layer on there, so. Work continues over at the softball complex in Ironton. A lot of volunteer help over there getting that work done, so quite a project. And then we'll be working on backfilling the seating area at the baseball field where we added the second row of block this fall, so hopefully to get grass seeded in before the first snow flies. So, all right.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Boza. Moving on to the elementary report with Carrie.
In your packets, I have a written report, and the only thing I really want to focus on in addition to it, there are two goals there to decrease the PBIS goals that I talked about last month. But I also want to talk about the academic goals that we're focusing on this year, and that they are in reading or literacy. Our goal is to really look at each individual and set their rate of growth at a rate that's accelerating their rate, so that they're not just meeting 1 year's of growth if possible. You know, our goal is always to get them to grow at least a year, but we're trying to advance that, accelerate that. So we're looking at setting goals with the students this year in literacy so that we can accelerate their reading growth as high as possible, but trying to accelerate it to more than a year because so many students are a little bit farther behind. We're trying to accelerate it to catch up, but then also go beyond that. So that's in reading. Math, we're looking at figuring out which skills our students still, the gaps, where are the gaps that our students are lacking so that we can focus and zoom in on those. So that's what teachers will be working on in services all year. So just wanted to let you guys know that. Thanks.
Thank you, Carrie. Heidi, middle school, high school report.
Okay, I have a written report for you as well, and it talks about a little bit about homecoming and how that finished up. And as far as building goals for this year, we're looking at using instructional strategies that really promote the higher order thinking and that academic performance, taking learning outside of the classrooms, applying it to their life. So we'll be doing different assessments with that and gathering data in a variety of ways to measure growth in the teachers, and the TLC will be helping with that. And then we'll further continue to work on celebrating and promoting a positive school culture. And we have quite a few measurements for that as well, and different initiatives like the home visits, expanding those beyond the years that we are currently using. And we're doing training for PBIS. Currently it's an pretty lengthy process. They say it takes up to 5 years to fully implement completely, but we're starting that process this year. So,
Thank you. Moving on to the superintendent report. Ryan?
Okay. In your packet, you had found my goals and professional development plan for this school year. It's outlined based on the standards for school administrators. And I tried to utilize different things when taking a look at what evidence would be brought forward to determine the evaluation process. So as you kind of look down, to give an example, I'm not going to read through each one of these, but example 1A, the goal or the standard is, in collaboration with others, use appropriate data to establish rigorous concrete goals in the context of student achievement and instructional programs. So what will be done in this situation would be to identify critical data, utilizing these different stakeholder groups, and then determining and discussing the following data, ranging from attendance to the teacher satisfaction survey, to financial goals, meaning our unspent balance, solvency ratio, continuing down the line with those items. I did change this pretty dramatically from what we've had in years previous, trying to align those as much to our individual board goals. So we actually list those in there. And also, you'll notice the ones that are underlined are actually our board goals and continuation of that. So for instance, uses research and other best practices in improving the education program. A graduate survey has been one of our goals in the board and is also the continuation of the superintendent goals. The other ideas were to align this with the standards so that what they provide with the IASB are guidance and how one piece of evidence can work for different standards. So as we aligned those and worked with Mr. Witt, Mr. Cook, and Mr. Richardson, I tried to come up with as much variety there, but as when Mr. Gregg and I were talking about it, this isn't everything that the superintendent is responsible for, and there are many other things that aren't listed there, but when we want to actually pinpoint those, or even tonight, as you guys have had a chance to look through these, if there's things that you think this is an area that we can more focus on and discuss, my plan is to actually bring this up each month and to share my progress on this. So this will be a monthly piece to my report, and I may highlight some of the things that might be able to point out to you in relation to what things upon my professional development this leads to. And there are 6 different standards there, varying things that already are in place, and then other things that we need to expand on from previous years' work that needs to go on and be a little bit more meaningful in what we actually do and try to accomplish. The other big piece that we'll be getting to in January, you'll notice we have a lot of things dealing with our ELL services. The reason for this is that we do have an equity visit coming in January. We were fortunate, along with MOC Floyd Valley, and there was one other district in our area that gets to have an equity visit from the state. And this is just a visit, so they come in, determine, it's more of a policy refresher to determine what practices and policies that we have in place, and if we're we're following those to the best of our ability. It also is attributed, as you'll probably see, and I don't know the article pertaining to the percentage of students who come from Hispanic descent in our community and how it's risen over the past years. Does any board member have any questions over the professional development plan? And feel free at any time, as you guys progress through different things over the months, if you feel that they were things that would be able to be brought forward to be placed on this, I would appreciate hearing your feedback and other things that I can continue to work on to improve in this position.
Is there any questions pertaining to what Mr. Kramer presented to us? One thing I think that we should note is there are guidelines established by the state of how we are to basically define his growth and evaluation, which we do cover all those topics within, and then there's some additional ones that, you know, we Ken and I and Mr. Gary Richardson and Ryan met one morning and had a brief about an hour meeting, I guess, concerning that. It's in progress yet, and we'll continue to work on it. Okay, now we're to the board member report. Generally, Ken has something to present to us, so we'll start with him.
Okay. For September, we're right on target, same as it was last year. We're running 94% of attendance. We're looking for that. I'm looking for that to go up a little bit, but we're still doing fairly well. And by the end of the year, we should be up another, could be up another 2%. So September, I guess things, is there sickness going around? Okay, well.
Well, I'm wondering, I'm going to try doing this and helping out everybody too on the, each month. I had the professional leave. I asked Tammy to take a little bit extra out of that and determine on that professional leave how much of that is required. So for instance, on last month's report, 28 days on Mr. Cook's portion were for professional development. Out of that 28 days, 82% are required by the state, that we can't even say, no, we don't feel like sending people to this. So what I would recommend, and I will continue to work at as we kind of talk with our state representatives, the realization that our goal of having as many teachers in the classroom as possible, that we know that's one of the big things for us, is very much controlled at the state level as opposed to the local level. And if they want to provide us with local control, like they continue to tell us, then give us that opportunity to make those decisions, because 82% is of that, that no one has an ability to tell them, no, we're going to keep our teachers home and in the classroom. makes a difference. So I'm going to try helping Mr. Cook out with that information on a monthly basis so we can kind of get some valuable information from that too. So, and I know Mr. Cook works hard at keeping that up to date. So.
One thing that I've noticed in my experience on the school board, the state control usually, they like to give it up when it comes to giving out the funding, but they still like to control what's going on. So, anybody have anything else? Mr. Cook or anybody? Thank you. Moving on to number 6, which is new business. Based upon all action items, we'll go through them all, then we'll go back and we'll identify each one of them. Is that okay? Okay. Start out with A, the wrestling room project. Excuse me.
No, good job. Well done. No wonder you were in tech. Oh, dang. You heard me making the comments about state representation.
Sorry for the interruption. We don't know how to get rid of it, but we have Mr. Vanort at the podium. Can you make sure that your microphone is on, Mark?
I think it's good.
Okay, go ahead.
First off, thanks for taking the time to meet with us tonight. We appreciate your time, and we'll try to be accommodating and make this as fast as possible. This is follow-up to our September 12th school board meeting where we had the wrestling room expansion project on the information only. What I'd first like to do is provide you with a brief review of our objective and where we want to go, and then bring you through our total program and why we believe that sustainability is here for our West Sioux Falcon wrestling program. The objective is to expand the wrestling room to provide a safe environment that is conducive to the athlete development in the sport of wrestling. Our key concerns, we've touched on these last month, and you have them in front of you, but athlete injury and safety, with concussions being on the forefront, I think it's imperative that we continue to review how we can improve situations in our sport. Additionally, proper training methods are needed, and in a room that is undersized, we not only increase the risk of athlete injury, but we also increase the risk of athletes not training properly, and that will show up in competition, thus hurting the future success of our program. And then maximizing opportunities. I think this is very important. That's what the educational system is about. I think that's what the athletic programs are for. I believe that the athletic programs provide great opportunity for students to leave the high school with scholarship opportunities, leadership qualities, and an understanding of what team truly means. And I want our wrestling program to have that opportunity to fulfill that in every facet of our student athletes' lives. So the current problem that we face is that the West Sioux wrestling room is currently undersized, state of the art in every other facet. We currently have about 51 square feet of wrestling space per kid, and we're looking to increase that. Optimal would be 100, but our current proposal for expansion would be sufficient. For every great feeder program, or for every great program, there's probably an even better feeder program. That's why I think it's very important that tonight we touch on what the Falcon Wrestling Club is. Our mission statement, our mission as a youth athletic program is to provide a fun, safe, and challenging wrestling experience to all participants, regardless of individual differences. We hope to promote physical, mental, social, and emotional development for our members through hard work, commitment, competition, and the camaraderie that the sport of wrestling provides. The concepts of self-discipline and individual responsibility are inherent for success in athletics as well as in life. To this end, we hope to strive. A little bit about the Falcon Wrestling Club and where we've been. The Falcon Wrestling Club is a nonprofit youth athletic organization run by volunteer members. The club is funded entirely by fundraising and donations. The goal of the organization is to introduce the boys and girls to the sport of amateur wrestling in a competitive environment. We want to continue to provide the best quality instruction, equipment, practices, and competition opportunities for all youth without any financial responsibility to the families. We hope all young wrestlers will progress to their potential through commitment with an eye on the next level of wrestling. The past season was a great one for our wrestling club. We had 72 youth athletes. We had 31 high school athletes participating in the sport of wrestling. At the AAU districts, we had 14 athletes compete, 2 of which medaled, one which won his second state championship. We also had 2 high school athletes qualify for the high school state tournament. And we also had 2 athletes qualify for Fargo Nationals, or USA Nationals in Fargo. This feat is something that many programs never see. The Falcon Wrestling Club provides training opportunities year-round. We primarily focus on folk-style wrestling, but we also provide freestyle and Greco opportunity. Our sustainability plan is really pretty simple. Participation is at the cornerstone to our program's current and long-term success. Athletic programs can be very expensive, thus creating situations in which parents cannot afford for their kids to participate. The Falcon Wrestling Club identifies that, and our goal is to make this financially feasible for all kids, regardless of financial means, to participate in the sport of wrestling. Where are we going? With a relentless pursuit of excellence, we intend to try to push our program to the top, not only in our area, but statewide. The next page, you will see a variety of different donations that the Falcon Wrestling Club, or improvements that the Falcon Wrestling Club has made. I'm not going to go through them line item by line item, but there's over $21,000 that has been contributed to development of wrestling in our community. We've also had many other additional contributions through our Falcon Wrestling Club that have positively impacted our situation. I think the few that need to be noted for the sake of the meeting tonight is that we did in 2015 install the subfloor in the wrestling room. We hung the wall mats, and we also installed the pull-up bars. About 3 years ago, I had an opportunity with some parents to sit down and visit with Mr. Kramer. It was important for us to develop goals for where we wanted to see this wrestling program go. As I pointed out earlier, it's very important that we have a great feeder program if we want to have a great high school program. Those goals were quite simple. Develop sustainability through high levels of participation, provide an opportunity to every student at no charge. Develop a means of fundraising that would allow for us to keep this program free, but also help cover the costs that are accrued in the sport of wrestling. Utilization of social media to promote the program. We believe that it's very important for the community to understand what we're trying to do and where we're trying to go. And the only way that we were going to accomplish goals 1, 2, and 3 was to build a positive culture, build a program that kids enjoyed and wanted to be a part of. We really had to build an image. At this point, I feel that we've accomplished many of these goals. As we continue to try to strive for better, I think that the wrestling room is a big part of that. I had a discussion with Mr. Kramer the other evening, and I think he would concur that we have accomplished much of what we spoke about. As we continue through this, the wrestling expansion, on September 12th, we walked away with 2 different options. We could knock a hole and have a temporary solution to what appears to be a long-term problem. After the engineered drawing, that proposal, this is an estimate, came back at $26,150. The preferred option, remove the entire wall. That proposal, after the engineered drawing, came back at $48,250. Again, an estimate. And then with both projects, we had the relocation of the storage that is currently in that room, and that's remained the same at $7,000. I think it's important that we talk about sweat equity. What are we going to do? We have spoken with many of our community members, and they are willing to assist with the wrestling room expansion project. The project is important to our future sustainability, our current training, and the welfare and safety of all of our athletes. Currently, we plan on this crew of volunteers to do the following: prep work of the wrestling room and an existing storage room. This would encompass rolling up the wrestling mats, hanging plastic for dust control, removal of the wall mats in the wrestling room, removal of the materials in the storage room. Installation of the subfloor after the wall has been removed. This includes gluing the foam blocks, the plywood, installing and fitting the floor, and fastening the floor. Installation of the wall mats once the room is completed. And final cleanup would also fall on our list of things to accomplish. Sweep, vacuum, dust, removal of plastic, roll mats out, and any other items that need to be accomplished. The Falcon Wrestling Club is willing to purchase all the wall mats for this project. We estimate that this volunteer work and the purchase of the wall mats will reduce the project cost by $7,110. The volunteer labor will constantly be evaluated throughout the project, and we will work to save costs where we can. Additionally, PR Construction is willing to work with our volunteers on the demo, and this will reduce costs by another $4,500. As a general contractor, PR Construction will monitor all aspects of this project, including the volunteer help. Below, there's a current list of the volunteers that will be working to provide that labor. And I think it should be noted that some of the youth kids and the high school kids that they like to get involved with this stuff. They kind of like to get their hands dirty. When we did the subfloor in 2015, the kids were in there, even our youngest kids, running the screw guns to put the screw down through the floor and stuff, and it was really an awesome opportunity to see. The paper came in and took a bunch of pictures. So our final proposal, the project itself, installation of the big beam, knock the entire wall out, $48,250, and the storage relocation comes to a subtotal of $55,250. Donations through the Falcon Wrestling Club of the wall mats and the labor provided is $7,110, and the volunteer labor for the demo is another $4,500 for a reduction in this project of $11,610. The final cost breakdown is that we're looking for a commitment from the West Sioux Community School of $43,640. At that, I would be more than happy to field any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark.
What is your timeline now?
The first day of wrestling practice is November 15. That second or third Monday in.
And how long would it take to complete the project, do you estimate?
One of the biggest issues is to the lead time on the beam, which I talked to them, and that's about a 2 to 3 week lead time to get that. Once we get in there and rolling, hopefully we'd have the room ready to go in a week. Have the wall knocked out, the beam in, and ready to go.
Thinking you'd be ready by the start of the season?
Yeah, if everything would have to click, but yeah, it's doable. If, you know, obviously the beam would have to get ordered right away, then we do the pre-planning ahead of time, and then once we know the beam is en route, then we would start the process of getting everything prepped. I visited with my supplier today, and he verified that longest would be 3 weeks, so.
And this is probably for Brian or Ben. What are the plans for the equipment that's currently in storage?
We have a number of options available. One, we have what we refer to as the old treadmill room. Currently, that's housing a bunch of unused prom decorations. We have actually 3 different spaces if somebody would just pull the trigger and throw some of that stuff away. That would free up a lot of room. One is the current janitor's area, the old tech room. A lot of that stuff we could move down to the bus barn because it's a storage. light bulbs, things like that. There's a lot of that stuff we could move out of there. The other is the room where we house our scoreboard table that we roll in and out of that room. We currently have 8 lunchroom tables in there, the white ones that fold up. And then we could move them into the old training room where we have some table tennis tables and stuff. So there's some room that we could move some things around. The rooms that we had built in that storage area, I would recommend moving those down to the west bay of the bus barn, so that they can be used for storage down there. So there's some areas, and we've talked about, we looked through a number of those rooms and where we can build 4-foot by 4-foot storage areas for each of the groups, similar to what's off the high school gym right now for our middle school activities. So it would take some moving around and some throwing away of some things that are unnecessary, but I think we can make it work.
Okay. And then budget-wise, how does it work?
If we were to look at, I'm actually just going to pull it right up. When we first discussed this last month, if you recall, I did put it into the Pepple silo budget. Get over here. If you remember, the initial rough estimate was $40,000. That still gave us a carryover of $779,175. That carryover is larger than any previous carryover over the previous 5 years in those funds. So our carryover is increasing each year. With the new estimate being at a total final proposal of $43,640, we would be just adjusting the carryover and reducing that by $3,640. So I would, with that amount, being that we had already placed it in as a potential item, do not feel that it would need it would not hurt us immediately. It would be doable.
And it would not delay any other projects that we have planned?
It would not delay anything currently, and I think
Right.
as we go on the next year's budget, looking down through 2018, as I start to get things, we would still be looking at increasing our carryover and doing the other plans and projects that we had in place.
Okay. As you presented it several times, you made a comment that this proposal came in approximately. You understand that if this is approved tonight, that this now becomes your budget and that you'd have to adhere to it. I had several talks with Mark and Mark Renz and Mark Venort about costs, trying to keep them down and stuff. And one of the things that the board has done now that perhaps we were not real good about doing is following the projects all the way through and making sure we stay reasonably right on the projects. And so I talked to Ken about it, and that's one of the things that we do try to practice hard, is to follow through to make sure we are, whether it's the payment in kind or whether it's the donations or whatever it is, that it ultimately comes up to the figure that we get to. We do understand sometimes that there is some things that pop up in a refurbishment or a redo, remodel type thing that is unforeseen. And what we really like to see is heads up on that. Just don't assume that it's okay. I guess I'd like to say that. But a couple things that I'd like to start out. You talk about going to Fargo and all your youth wrestling things. Is all your wrestling activities considered school-sponsored?
No, that wouldn't be the case.
Okay. There's no criticizing for that. I'm just asking that. It'll come back later on why I'm asking this. Do area school districts participate to the levels of what I just brought up? Do area districts participate that you're aware of with stuff like Fargo, things like, I think you've been other places with your youth?
I would say that compared to other school districts, our participation in those types of events is at a higher level than other schools our size.
Okay.
I would add, though, that I would think in comparison to other schools that are competitive, what we would refer to as the good programs, they have a lot more participation in activities like those.
They being West Sioux?
No, they being other schools that have very competitive programs, the good
The
programs
reason why I'm
participate
asking
in
that,
those.
I'm trying to establish what wrestling entails now compared to years ago. And then with all the additional activities, do you, I mean, being that they're not school-sponsored, of course, they're probably non-paid, and so you require or need additional volunteer work and labor, which you have from parents or people interested in your program?
That's correct.
Okay. And so when you talk about leading or bringing the kids up from that, that's crucial. I mean, that's what you're counting on as far as that, okay. I guess that's the questions that I had. Are there any other questions?
Yeah. What percent of our elementary or younger kids, what percent of those will continue to the end of high school? In other words, what guarantee do we have that in 2 years we're going to need less space, or we're just going to have more square foot per person? Well, that's what it
Well,
amounts to.
for one thing, what they're doing with this wrestling room, I have never considered that to be the, to be the solution for our youth wrestling. Currently, they do not practice in that current room. They do it in the commons, I believe, correct? I mean,
Half the group does. Go ahead.
Tuesdays and Thursdays, the 4th through 8th grade practice in there at nights.
okay. And to answer your question, there's no way that anybody in this room could probably project where we'll be in 2 years.
Okay.
I mean, that's, if I was to offer a educated guess.
Then what percentage of the people that start at the 6th grade level will still be in that program by the time they're seniors? Does anybody know anything about that? I don't.
We started this process of redevelopment of our image, call it 3.5 years ago. And since then, the retention rate in every grade level has been, I would guess, in excess of 85%. We just have not seen fallout. The kids have started it, the parents have gotten involved, we travel together, we sit together. It goes back to the opportunity that I spoke about at the beginning, and that's understanding the true meaning of a team. And I think that is one of the biggest reasons why we see that retention rate as high as it is.
With the experience that I have with it, 3 years ago when I started with the program, we had 31 kids, I think, at the start of the year. And in 3 years, it's gone up to over 70. And every year, it's expected to go up higher. So, there's no guarantee, as Gary said, there's no guarantee that we can give a hard percentage. But you can see that there's a need there. And with this, with the larger of the two proposals, with taking out the wall, what is the square footage per wrestler that you'll get to?
Well, that's a number that's based off of what our anticipated number of kids. At 35, student athletes is what I believe it was. We were at 76 square foot, I believe, give or take a couple feet.
Okay.
Those numbers were presented in the informational piece a month ago.
And I guess I'll just, Mark Renz called me a few months ago and asked what the board would like to see as they present to us. There were several things that I brought up to him, and then at a later time I actually had the same opportunity to bring it up to Mr. Venort. And this is for me personally, how I presented it. One was communication. Two was the intent and the desire. Three was I liked a lot of people involved. We've seen that work with other projects, whether it was track, whether it was the baseball field in Haywarden, whether it's the softball field that currently under progress with in Ireton. And so I guess how I look at this, yeah, it came in higher than what they presented to us last month. But one of the things that I guess I wanted to make sure that I wanted to say is the fact is that the pride that's developed by all the internal people working together is important. I think anybody that's involved in any of those type of things sees that it's ownership of the program. And I guess how I look at that is if I can project that onto this project, that's one of the big things that I like to see. Second thing, or the next thing I want to say is, in the removal of these lockers and stuff, I've been critical about the cost. I've been critical about where they're going to go. Assurance other than Mr. Boza of where they're going to go comes from the custodial staff, because there has actually been some talk with them and they're supportive of it. Talk with Mr. Suisaw, who is implemental in the youth, is one of the people that are implemental of the youth football thing, where a lot of that stuff is stored, and he's in favor of it too. So even though I may not be totally liking the $43,000 figure, all the stuff that I have that I wanted to see from them, they have met in their presentation, whether it was to me personally or here at the board.
When will this change again? When did we build that state-of-the-art facility that we now have?
5 years ago.
4 or 5.
4 or 5 years ago?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. And what was that based on? Just a nice place, or was it based on how many people we had, or what?
Yeah, I believe it was based on what the numbers were at that time, I believe. I wasn't involved in that development of that, but I can only speculate that would have been the numbers of the previous program and utilized to determine what was going to take place without any growth or maintaining normal average.
When we did the project 5 years ago, the wrestling room did not expand considerably in size with the current room that we had. The current room we had was a 42 by 42. And now, or excuse me, the room we had was a 42 by 42, now is 42 by 48, is that right?
That's right.
So it did not expand considerably. The only reason that wrestling room moved is because the necessity was there to have the bathrooms, the hot water heaters, things like that in the place where the old wrestling room was. So we did not improve that facility other than relocating that room with the project 5 years ago.
And I would add to that 3 years ago, our numbers in the high school program were 10. The next year, it was 18. Last year, we ended at 28, started with 31. This year, we're projecting to start with 38 and would expect to finish somewhere around 35 to 38. We don't see fallout.
The other thing I'd like to add, Ken, is, you know, you talk about what guarantees numbers. The only thing that we can do to guarantee numbers is what we control, is what we do. And I guess in saying that, when I have a son that's in 3rd grade that loves the sport, you know, we wouldn't put the time and put this stuff on the line and do the fundraising if we didn't want to build a program for a long time. We're not going to spend the time and not do it to its full extent. So I can't guarantee what's going to happen in 3 years, but I can guarantee that we'll put our best foot forward to make it happen.
Russ, we haven't heard from you.
I take everything in.
Okay. If there's no other questions, thank you for your time. We'll be back to you. Moving on to B, the coach's handbook. Mr. Boza?
I had a discussion with Mr. Gregg in response to an item that we talked briefly about last meeting, which was the addition of cheerleading coaches back into the list of coaches that we pay. Mr. Gregg was kind enough to come in, and we had a long discussion about the pros and the cons of that. And I think the consensus we came to is we asked them to sacrifice back when our budget was in trouble by giving up pay for those positions. And I think now we're back to a position where the investment in those positions would be worth it. So we are asking to amend the back page of the coach's handbook to include one cheerleading sponsor for football, which is a fall sport, and then wrestling and basketball as winter sports. As you can see on the screen in red there, highlighted in red.
One thing I guess I'd like to add is the switch from being paid to non-paid actually started when Mr. Olson was here. There was 2 individuals that actually partook in the coaching. I think it was Brenda Milroy and what was the other
Green.
one? Who?
Connie Anderson's daughter.
Actually, yeah,
There's some-
Green, Miranda or
Miranda, yep.
But anyway, and then there was another person also. So I guess I wanted to note that this has been funded voluntarily for more than just the current coach. That it
absolutely,
wasn't.
yeah.
So you two came up with a plan?
Hire him.
Okay. And that's going to be based upon percentage of,
It's laid out on the back page already.
okay,
Percentage of the base.
okay.
Are those negotiable? Can we just do that now?
What's that? Set
Put them
the
on,
sa-
set the salary and put them on the back page?
It is
They're already on the back page.
Okay,
And salaries, yeah, have been set.
it's already there? Was there last year?
It's always
Been there since, yeah. Everything's negotiable, Ken.
Not when it comes to negotiations, that's for sure.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Boza or Mr. Gregg? Thank you for you two for taking your time to get into that. Move on to C, LEP allowable cost.
I'm going to discuss C and D at the same time because both of them actually deal with very similar things. LEP deals with our students who are English language learners, and there is an additional weighting that due to the increased costs of education for students with English language services, the state allows you what is called spending authority. So in relation to putting it in terms of on your personal household, it's your credit card limit. You don't need to get up to that amount. You don't have to spend that amount, but your spending authority is really what we have to go by in relation to our budgets. It is illegal in the state of Iowa to exceed your spending authority. As West Sioux, if you remember in the situation where we were budgetarily, we did exceed that a couple of years and had to go to the SBRC. This same group controls our spending authority through extra weighting or allowable cost. And so by making this motion, you're not agreeing to the spending of those dollars, you're agreeing to increasing our limit so we can bank that spending authority towards future years. The same would go for the special education deficit allowable growth. That is for spending authority only, not the spending of those dollars. That comes later in March when we take a look at our budget to determine where our budget is and if we will be able to use those funds or actually just bank the spending authority.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Kramer. Moving on to E, which is a policy of that we're going to go through. Go ahead, Mr. Kramer.
This is policy 417 with the addition of e-cigarettes. So as you know, all of our signage around the district deals with chewless tobacco or smokeless tobacco, and cigarettes. This would add the e-cigarettes. The group, the Tobacco Free Iowa, actually donates those signs, so they have updated signs for us. So they provide those to us if we approve the policy. So there's no cost associated to this. It's just the adding of the e-cigarettes.
Okay. Any more questions for E? Moving on to F, early retirement.
Again, this is the second read of the early retirement policy, and I had that number wrong. I'm sorry, that is 417. That policy is the early retirement program for West Sioux and has been updated with the most recent updates and negotiations for medical amounts to $675 per month.
Any questions and concerns to this? Moving on to the bond refinancing.
I sent this out to the board earlier, and we did some checking. The Piper Jaffray came back with two options for us in regards to the savings available to refinance our bond. The one option gives us a savings of $189,196.41 over the life of that bond. That was with it expiring in 7/1/2030. The next would be the savings of $230,629. Those payments would end in 2028. Jake and I are comfortable with either option based on the savings that we have and based on where we're at financially. We would be able to, as the $189,000 savings, what happens is we have a lower payment on a monthly basis, and it keeps the same life of the loan. On the other, it shortens it up significantly, and there's more savings. Any questions with the bond? They did lay out a estimated timetable if we were to go with Piper Jaffray and refinancing this bond.
One question I have, those figures of savings, are they the net savings? Because there's a cost to change of about $70,000.
That is correct. Those would not be I don't believe that includes the amount cost for Piper Jaffray. So there would be a different amount based on what they would charge us. So the savings wouldn't be as high, I don't think, based on that.
And even though it is an action item, if we did not act upon it tonight, it's possible it could change for the better or worse. But we do not need, we can table it if we don't feel like we
Absolutely.
desire to do this evening.
Yep. we can do what, we have those three options. We can table, we can look at the two saving options, and we're comfortable with any direction because, as Gary said, the outlook could go either way.
Which way do you think it'll go?
Kind of depends on, I don't even want to call the presidential race right now, especially after the debate, so I have no idea, Ken. You probably follow it better than I in regards to that. The financial impact could go either way.
If it goes down, we're better off holding. If it doesn't, then we're better off where we are.
Right.
In my opinion, though, one of the biggest things is I think we need to make sure what our costs are versus our savings. So in other words, if it's net, what is it going to be? And we can ask that in like just the week prior to the next board meeting.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be right before the election. And then we can determine then, even if we want to go on. I think that's one question we need to have a better answer for is
That's
what,
fine with me.
you know, is it the net or is it minus that? Because we have to rewrite the bond and the whole thing, I imagine, and there's approximately, what, 70,000?
That is correct.
Okay. But we'll come back to that here when we get going. Any questions? Okay, going on to the roof consulting.
This is the agreement with H&D Design and Consulting. As I've mentioned to many of you before on our last roofing project, it was a challenging one and dealt with a lot of things that typically aren't involved in a roofing project, from live electrical lines to dead electrical lines to the number of air conditioning units we have on our roofs, with additions, with different layouts and heights of the gym. We have a very unique middle school, high school building that has kind of required us to do some things that are a little different than other typical buildings. So what I have found in working with the consultant in getting the number of bids that we've had over previous years, and with the challenging jobs that we have, I believe it has more than paid for itself on a yearly basis.
That's a continuing project, isn't it?
We're continuing
We have
with
2
it.
years to go.
Yeah, we have a number of different things. We also are looking at the elementary roof. That, if you'll remember, that actually is the roof that was on our plan for this coming summer. In talking with Bob Brewington, we may take a look closer at one of the sections of the high school because that seems to have more concerns most recently with some leaks. It seems that this one that we had this summer did a really nice job of some major problems that we were having. So I think we've gotten that solved. And if you know about having a number of those storms in the spring, we have a tendency to have some problems with setting off the alarms in the high school, middle school. If we get a big rain, sometimes what will happen is we have the overflow and it'll run down into some of the ceilings. And what will happen is actually those heat sensors will get wet and then they short, or then they cause an error, and so then it tells the system that it needs to set off, and so it's resetting throughout the night if we have any of those. We have one section of the old roof by the industrial technology area that seems to be having that problem more than any other section right now. The elementary roof, Brad has been great at going above and beyond and going up there himself on that steel roof and actually putting sealer over the top of individual screws because that's where those leaks will start on a steel roof like that. We do have one area that is concerned for ice buildup. That seems to be the one area per year that we have to kind of have a little bit more attention to, but Brad has been able to get up there and address that, so we haven't had classroom disruptions for that reason. So as the consultant goes through, takes a look at both roofs, analyzes which one might need the attention first, we'll kind of get back in the early January, February with the idea of where we're going to go with this summer project.
Any questions? Thanks, Merlin. No. So this is the extent of the new business, which all requires some type of vote. Like to go through each one, vote on each one individually, correct? Is that everybody feels the most comfortable doing so, I believe? Also, another time that we can ask more questions or discussion, because I will ask for further discussion after the motions are made, and we can have some before also. That is not a problem. So, start off with, we have the wrestling room project. Any further discussion? Any comments? We do have the option of asking within the crowd if we have a question, but mainly this is meant for between us. Russ, you were...
What kind of disruption, classroom disruption, do you think we're gonna experience with this, doing this now versus during the summer or something?
In that part of the building, we should have minimal disruption. There will be some disruption in any construction project within the building. There will be some. I'm confident. My biggest concern would be the dust and properly fitting the building in those areas that would be needing some dust repression to make sure we don't have any disturbances there, because that seemed to be the biggest issue when we were dealing with the construction project earlier.
I'm going to assume that this area is new enough that there's no asbestos and stuff like that.
I would make that same assumption, but I cannot confirm anything that if it was used in that construction or not. No, you're fine.
Go ahead.
The storage room now is the 99 edition, if I
Right.
remember right. And then the wrestling room now is a 2011 edition, so.
Any further questions? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I'll motion.
Second.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Sellers, seconded by Mr. Gregg. Any further discussion? Anything you want to touch on before we take the vote?
Yeah, which option?
The larger, taking out the full wall.
I concur.
That's what your intent was too? Okay. So it'd be the more expensive project. Okay. All those in favor of approving the wrestling room project as it was presented to us, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on to B, we have Coach's Handbook. Any questions in regards to that? Larry and Ben, you have anything left to add? You're the originators of it.
You've posted the positions. Okay, but they've already been posted. You're waiting to. Okay, that's what I was wondering. I'll move we approve the changes to the coach's handbook.
Is there a
I'll
second?
second that.
Okay. Motion made by Mr. Gregg, seconded by Mr. Cook. Any other discussion before we vote? All those in favor of accepting the coach's handbook changes on the back page for the cheerleading indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you. The LEP allowable cost, Mr. Kramer presented that to us. Any questions? If not, I would entertain a motion.
So move.
Is there a second?
Support.
Motion made by Mr. Cook, seconded by Mr. Coons. Any discussion concerning the vote? All those in favor of accepting the LEP allowable cost proposal from Mr. Kramer indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you. Under D, we have the special education deficit allowable growth presented to us by Mr. Kramer. Any questions? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Coons, seconded by Mr. Gregg. Any discussion, questions regarding the vote we're about to take? All those in favor of accepting the special education deficit allowable growth presentation and by Mr. Kramer indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on to E, we have the addition to our policy of 905.2 in regards to the electric cigarettes of our tobacco-free environment, presented to us by Mr. Kramer. Any questions? Entertain a motion of sorts.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Cook, seconded by Mr. Sellers. Questions previous to the vote? If not, all those in favor of implementing the tobacco-free environment in regards to the electric cigarettes of 905.2 indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. We have the early retirement, which is the second reading of policy 417 with changes to the insurance, as was discussed. Any questions? Comments? I'd entertain a motion of sorts.
I'll move, we accept it.
Is there a second?
Sport.
Was that Russ? Okay. Motion made by Mr. Gregg, seconded by Mr. Coons. Questions before we vote? If not, all those in favor of the early retirement of 417, second reading, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. We have the bond refinancing. Mr. Kramer presented it to us with timelines and options that we have. So we do have multiple options in front of us. Any questions, comments? Okay. I would entertain a motion of sorts.
I'll move to table bond refinancing until we have a net value gained.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion made by Mr. Cook, seconded by Mr. Sellers, to table G on new business to gather more information, more exact, that will be presented to us at the next meeting. Correct? Okay. Any more questions before we vote? If not, all those in favor of tabling the bond refinancing and till we gather more information indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. We have the roof consulting continuation, I guess you'd call it, on the prices from H&D for our roof projects. Any questions? Entertain a motion of sorts, please.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Cook, seconded by Mr. Gregg, to approve the roof consulting to H&D for the roofs for this coming year. Any questions? Everybody clear? All those in favor of accepting the roof consulting, as the motion asked, for H&D indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. That is all of the new business. Thank you. On number 10, we have printed that we have a closed session for the purpose of talking and discussing for open enrollment. Need a motion to go into closed session.
A motion for that.
Is there a second?
Support.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Sellers, seconded by Mr. Coons to go into closed session on the discussion of open enrollment, particularly open enrollment. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. This time, we'd like the meeting room to be cleared. We'll come back and get you when we're done. Thank you. Tammy,
It's the new stuff that came.
now we have to go into, we do a roll call, correct?
I think it's here.
Yeah.
That one? Yeah, stapled. I had it right next to the updated 200 policies from Larry. I was telling him where I found my, it was right next to yours.
We'd like that if you would,
Okay,
unless
certainly.
you're uncomfortable.
No, that's fine.
You can sit down and talk about it, okay?